I showed up to my high school reunion with a photograph, and I tore my ex's life apart. 7 years ago, my fiancé dumped me the night before I shipped out to basic training, told me love doesn't pay the bills, and ran off with a rich girl. 7 years later, he said the exact same thing to my face at our high school reunion, trying to humiliate me in front of everyone. Everyone in that ballroom expected me to cry. But nobody knew that I was holding a photograph in my hand that night. A photograph that would shatter his perfect little life, and his rich wife's too, in front of every single person who mattered. And I'd been ready for this for a long, long time. My name is Cara Morrison. It's 2026 now, and I'm a nurse at a community clinic on the outskirts of Phoenix. My life is quiet, the kind of quiet you don't appreciate until you've spent years without it. Up at 6 every morning. Feed the cat, make coffee, drive to work. See patients until 5. Drive home, watch something stupid on TV, go to sleep. Night shifts every couple of weeks. Drinks with coworkers once in a while. Nothing dramatic. Nothing I can complain about. But for 7 years, I'd been waiting. Just waiting. I didn't always know what I was waiting for, but I knew it when I finally saw it. June 2019. I was 22, 4 years out of high school, working the register at a grocery store and saving every penny for the military. My dad left me a beat-up pickup truck and a "you take care of yourself" before cancer took him. My mom took off when I was 16 and never looked back. I didn't have much to lose, so when Sean Butler, my fiancé at the time, sat down on the floor of our cramped studio apartment and told me he'd met someone else, I wasn't exactly shocked. The someone else was Allison Crawford. Her father owned a chain of building supply companies across the state. She wore labels I couldn't pronounce, drove a car that cost more than I'd make in 2 years, and had a diamond on her finger that could have paid my rent for a decade. Sean said, "Cara, I'm just a regular guy. I want a good life. Allison can give me that. I love you, but love doesn't pay the bills. You understand that, right?" He didn't even look back when he walked out. That night, I curled up on the floor with a pain in my gut so sharp I couldn't straighten my spine. I thought it was heartbreak. You see that in movies, right? People in emotional agony double over like they've been punched. I didn't think anything else. The next morning, I dragged 2 suitcases to the Greyhound station. 7.5 hours to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I sat in the back row with my jacket folded under me because I could feel blood soaking through my jeans. I told myself it was just my period. 6 days into basic training, I ran 400 meters on the track and collapsed face first into the dirt. The medic who treated me was a black woman in her 40s. She read through my tests in silence for a long time, then took off her glasses and looked at me. "Honey," she said, "do you know you had a miscarriage?" I lay on that cot staring at the ceiling. There was a water stain up there, shaped like an open hand. "You must have felt something," she said. "The pain, the bleeding, you didn't notice?" I thought it was heartbreak, I told her. That was the stupidest thing I've ever said. And also the truest. She didn't push. She treated me, prescribed some things, wrote in my file. Then she said, "You need rest. At least 2 weeks off high-intensity training." "I'll be back tomorrow," I said. I wasn't back tomorrow. I was back the next day. I showed up in fatigues at morning formation, and the drill sergeant looked at me, opened his mouth, then closed it. Nobody said anything. I was nobody. Why would anyone care that a female recruit had lost a pregnancy she didn't even know existed? I didn't care myself. Except I did. I just took 7 years to admit it. I never told anyone about that night. Not a single person. Not Jesse, my best friend from the service. Not any of the men I dated afterward. I sank that child like a coin into deep water and told myself that part of the lake had frozen over and would never be disturbed. Then the photograph showed up. April 2026. The reunion. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, pressed a faded Polaroid into my palm. The edges were curled and yellowed. In the picture, a young woman in a hospital gown was holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. The baby's eyes were closed, and she was so small she fit in one hand. On the back, in blue ballpoint, someone had written, "Her name is Anna. You gave her life." I couldn't give her a home. I was standing in the middle of the Marriott ballroom, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and clinking glasses and the ghost of my past. And right there in front of me was Sean Butler, smug, successful, beautifully tailored suit, his arm wrapped around Allison Crawford's $1 million waist. He just said it again. Love doesn't pay the bills. That exact phrase. 7 years later, and he still thought he'd won. Everyone was looking at me. I looked down at the photograph. Then I looked up at Sean. And I smiled. I smiled because I'd been waiting for this moment for 7 full years. And I'd spent the last 2 weeks, ever since I saw the reunion invitation in my mailbox, getting ready. Sean thought he was standing on a stage, basking in his victory. But he was actually standing on the edge of a hole I'd been digging for him, and that photograph was just the final push. He grinned at me, all teeth and confidence. "Kara, long time. Heard you're a nurse now? That's great. Stable work. Love doesn't pay the bills, am I right?" People around him laughed. Others looked down at their plates. A few pulled out their phones and pretended to check messages. I looked at his face, that same face that had told me 7 years ago that he was just a regular guy who wanted a good life, and I said, "Sean, the night you left me, I had a miscarriage." The whole ballroom went silent. So silent I could hear the ice machine behind the bar dropping cubes into a bin. "You, what?" His smile froze solid. "You don't remember?" I was curled up on the floor in pain that night. "What did you think that was? You thought I was just having a stomachache because you broke up with me? You never told me. I didn't know." I went to basic training the next morning. 6 days later, I collapsed on the track. The medic told me I'd miscarried. Do the math, Sean. The night you left, I was about 7 weeks along. Allison's face went white. The champagne flute in her hand tilted, and a few drops splashed onto her gold dress. She didn't even notice. Sean opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I took a step closer to him, my voice low but carrying clear through the frozen room. "You said love doesn't pay the bills. You were right. But when you walked out that door, you took more than your own luggage. You took a child's chance to live, and you didn't even know she existed, so you don't get to feel guilty. But for 7 years, I've been living for her. And tonight, I came here to make sure you knew that." I turned and walked away. Behind me, the room erupted. The crash of a dropped glass. The scrape of chair legs on carpet. Allison's shrill voice cutting through the noise. "What the hell else did you lie about?" Sean stammered defense. "I didn't know, I swear I didn't know." I reached the ballroom doors and looked back over my shoulder. Sean was still standing in the middle of that table, his suit jacket twisted sideways, his tie hanging loose, his face a shade of red I'd never seen on him before. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw a kind of panic I'd never seen either. I gave him a small smile, and I walked out. But that was only the beginning. Because the photograph wasn't my only piece of evidence. I had more. A bank transfer record. A company registration. 3 encrypted emails. An audio file. Enough to turn Sean's perfect marriage to dust over the next 2 weeks. I'd been gathering this for 2 years. Ever since I got out of the service, moved to Phoenix, and started working at that clinic. Not for revenge, or maybe it was, a little, but mostly because that child, the one who'd never gotten a name, deserved a reckoning. And I was the only one left to give it to her. Walking to the parking garage, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I read the message and stopped dead. Kara, this is the nurse who gave you the photo tonight. Someone showed up at my house. A blonde woman in a white Mercedes. She asked about the photo's negative. How did she find me? I felt the blood drain from my face. Allison had found the nurse. In less than 20 minutes. I called the number immediately. It rang 3 times, then a woman's voice, low and southern-tinged, answered, "Hello. It's me, Kara. Are you okay? She just left. My daughter's here." I didn't open the door. But she kept ringing the bell for almost 10 minutes. I told her I'd call the police, and she left. Did you tell her anything? Nothing. But I'm scared she'll come back. Don't stay there tonight. Can you go to your sister's? A pause on the other end. Then, quieter, how do you know I have a sister? Your daughter said, "Mommy, I want to go to Auntie's when you gave me the photo." I hear things. Another pause, longer this time. Then, okay. I'll pack and go. Send me the address. I promise, I'll handle this. I hung up and sat in my car, my palms clammy on the steering wheel. Allison was faster than I'd expected. But that was okay. The faster she moved, the more mistakes she'd make. And the more she harassed that nurse, the more she proved she knew exactly what that photograph meant. I started the engine but didn't pull out. I sat in the dark garage, pulled up a contact I'd saved over a year ago but never called. The contact was just one letter, C. I dialed. It rang once, then a man's voice answered, lazy and amused, "Kara. I'm guessing you saw him tonight. Got him in the crosshairs. You ready on your end? Been ready for months. Check your email. I sent you 3 things, the bank statements for Butler's Shell Company, the forged purchase orders with Crawford's stamp, and a recording of Allison saying, and I quote, 'My dad's side is taken care of, you just route the profits to my account.' That juicy enough for you?" I smiled, there in the dark. "See, why are you doing this for me?" A long pause on the line. Then he said, "Because I owe one to the girl who sat in the back of that Greyhound with her jacket soaked in blood. You saved me once. You just don't remember." I wanted to ask more, but he'd already hung up. I set the phone on the passenger seat, sat there a moment longer, then pulled out of the garage. I didn't go home. I drove to a 24-hour internet cafe on the south end of Phoenix. 1 in the morning. I sat in a corner booth, opened my email, and found the files from C. 3 PDFs and 1 audio file. I opened them one by one, my heart racing but my hand steady. First PDF, 18 months of bank records for Butler Building Supply, Sean's side company. 6 large deposits listed, all from subsidiary accounts of Crawford's top 3 suppliers. Second PDF, 3 purchase order scans. The contracting party was Butler Building Supply. The supplier was listed as one of Crawford's vendors. But the stamp at the bottom, that was Crawford's corporate seal. Sean had used his father-in-law's company name to sign contracts and funneled the product to his own business. Third PDF, the shareholder structure for Butler Building Supply. Sean held 51%. The other 49% belonged to Allison Crawford Butler. She knew. She'd been in on it. She was getting a bigger cut than her husband. The audio file played. Grainy, but unmistakable, Allison's voice. "I told you, my father's side is handled. He's busy with the new project, he won't check the books. Just route the profits to my personal account, not the company one. Nobody knows about that account." Sean's voice, "You're sure he won't find out? What if he does? I'm his only daughter. He won't do a thing to me." September last year. C had placed a recorder under a flower pot in her parents' garden. The quality was surprisingly decent. I backed everything up on 2 USB drives and a cloud folder, then logged off. Walking out of the cafe, the sky was already turning pale. Phoenix in April still had a chill at dawn, wind tunneling down the streets and whipping my jacket open. I stood on the curb and watched the streetlights click off one by one, and I felt something rise in me, something I'd kept submerged for 7 years, now finally breaking the surface. I touched the Polaroid in my jacket pocket. I'd kept it on me all night, close to my chest. "Anna," I whispered. Mommy just stacked a few more cards. The next 5 days, I did nothing. Or rather, I did something that looked exactly like nothing. I went to work. I came home. I fed Tater. I ate lunch with my coworkers. I made small talk. I did my laundry. I watched TV. But my phone never stopped recording. I screenshotted everything that happened in the reunion group chat. The gossip spreading from that night. The questions, is what Kara said true? The speculation, the debates, the gradual shift in tone as people started cross-referencing public business records and finding Butler Building Supply's registration. I watched public opinion turn like a slow tide. Day 5, I got a private message from Megan, a girl I'd never been close to in high school but who'd kept me on her socials all these years. "Kara, stop talking in the group chat. Someone's saying you faked the evidence for sympathy." I wrote back, "Who?" She sent me a screenshot. A gray profile avatar with a string of random letters as a username. Joined the group the same night as the reunion. Posted 7 messages, all questioning the authenticity of my story. The language was polished, professional. Like someone who'd done PR crisis management before. I saved the screenshot and ran the account's ID through a tracker I'd set up months ago. 2 minutes later, the software matched the first 6 digits of the registered phone number to the customer service hotline on Crawford Building Supply's website. Allison had sent her company's PR people into the group chat to muddy the water. I didn't expose it right away. I took the screenshot, closed my phone, heated up a bowl of mac and cheese, and sat on the couch eating it with Tater's head resting on my ankle. When I finished, I opened my laptop and logged into a local community forum I'd registered for 2 years ago but never posted on. I spent 2 hours writing a post. The title, 7 years ago he left me for money. Tonight I have every piece of evidence he and his rich wife stole from her father. I split the evidence into 4 parts. Part 1, my military medical records. Name, date, diagnosis, early pregnancy termination. Patient reported no awareness of pregnancy. Chief complaint was abdominal pain lasting approximately 1 week. Part 2, Summary of Crawford Building Supplies Internal Audit. Sales Director Sean Butler entered into 6 procurement contracts with 5 vendors without company authorization, using Crawford Building Supplies corporate seal. Total value approximately $2.3 million, of which roughly $1.1 million was routed to Butler Building Supply, a company under his personal control. C had sent me that audit summary 3 days earlier, in an unmarked envelope delivered to the clinic. I'd scanned and locked the original in my safe. Part 3, The Shareholder Structure. Allison Crawford Butler holding 49%. Part 4, A full transcript of the audio recording. I wrote one more paragraph at the end. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this for the 22-year-old girl who sat in the back of a Greyhound bus with her jacket pressed between her legs and no idea what she was losing. She bled so much, and nobody told her what that blood meant. Now she knows. I hit publish at 11 o'clock that night. I didn't sleep well. It wasn't nerves exactly, it was my phone vibrating non-stop. The post's views climbed from 1,000 to 5,000 to 20,000. The comments section spiraled through 30 pages. Some people called Sean a bastard. Some went after Allison. Some blamed Crawford Building Supply for letting rot set in at the top. Others just wrote, "Kara, hold on." At 3 in the morning, I found a comment that made me sit straight up in bed. OP, that Butler Building Supply address, I walked past it this afternoon. The sign's still there, but there was a white Mercedes parked out front. License plate ended with CLF. That's Crawford's fleet code. A photo was attached. Blurry, but you could make out the plate. The last 3 letters were unmistakably CLF. Allison had been there today. She was cleaning house. I sat up, switched on the lamp, and dialed C. He answered on the second ring, voice raspy with sleep. "You saw the forum?" Allison was at that office today. "She's probably shredding files." "Not possible," he said, suddenly awake. "I had someone clear out every piece of paper 3 days ago." She walked into empty cabinets and confetti. Then why was she there? She might have been pulling the security drive. But it doesn't matter, I made a copy 2 months ago. A beat of silence. Then, "See, who are you, really?" I heard him exhale. When he spoke, his voice had shifted, less of the amused hacker, more something quieter. "I'm the guy who stood behind you in the Greyhound line that morning. You had blood on your jeans, and you didn't know it. I handed you a pack of tissues. You took them. You said thank you. You didn't look at me." My fingers tightened around the phone. "I didn't remember that." "Course you don't," he said. "You weren't really there. But do you remember the guy in the gray hoodie sitting 2 rows behind you on the bus? The one who watched you fold your jacket under your seat, who saw you not eat a thing for 7 hours, who watched you get off looking like you'd just seen your own ghost? That was you. That was me. I was shipping out to Fort Jackson too. Wanted to say something, but you looked like you couldn't take one more word from anyone. Later we ended up in different companies, but I never forgot your name. After I got out, I did some work in investigations. About 2 years ago, I was scrolling through business registrations and saw a Butler Building Supply pop up. Ran the principal, and there he was. Your ex. You've been digging for me the whole time? Not for you, he said quietly. For the girl on that bus who bled through her jeans and never made a sound. She owed herself an answer. I just helped her find the papers. I couldn't speak. After a long pause, he said, "My name's Derek. Derek West. Now you know." "Thank you, Derek. Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow's when it really starts." He was right. 7 o'clock the next morning, my phone blew up. The clinic front desk called to say someone had left a flower arrangement at my workstation with a card that read, "Thank you for speaking up." 3 different news outlets had reached out, local TV and 2 newspapers. They'd seen the forum post and wanted interviews. I silenced everything, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the kitchen counter drinking it slowly while Tater wound around my ankles. Then I turned on the local morning news. Crawford Building Supplies headquarters was swarming with reporters. A woman in a charcoal suit read a statement to the cameras. "Crawford Building Supply takes internal compliance very seriously. Regarding recent information circulating online, the company has launched a full internal review. Any violations will be dealt with in accordance with the law and company policy." A ticker scrolled beneath. "Sources indicate Sales Director Sean Butler has been suspended pending investigation." Butler's wife, Allison Crawford Butler, the founder's daughter, has also resigned from her marketing position. I watched the screen as the camera cut to the company's side entrance. Sean came out carrying a cardboard box. No jacket, collar open, hair a mess. He walked fast, head down, ignoring the reporters shouting questions at him. He loaded the box into the trunk of a silver sedan and drove away without a word. Back to the anchor, "Neither Mr. nor Mrs. Butler has commented." I turned off the TV and rinsed my coffee mug. Tater jumped onto the counter, sat beside the sink, and stared at me. "Tater," I said. "It's Saturday. What should we do today?" He yawned. I took him to the pet store and bought 3 new flavors of wet food and a crinkly toy with a bell inside. On the way back, I passed a small frame shop on a side street. I went in and picked out a simple wooden frame, just big enough for the Polaroid. At home, I slid the photo into the frame and set it on my desk. Tater jumped up, sniffed it, bumped his head against the glass, then curled up beside it, purring. 3 in the afternoon, Megan sent me a video. It was a new post from that gray profile account in the reunion group chat, something threatening, in veiled terms. People who don't delete their posts might face consequences. The message had already been deleted by the group admin, but Megan was fast with screenshots. "Keep it," I texted her. "That's useful." 5 p.m., Derek sent, "Allison left the office this morning with a safe. I've already got backup copies of whatever she might have taken. Contract originals and a handwritten profit-sharing sheet with her signature." I opened my email. The sheet was there, 6 transfers, dates, amounts, supplier names. And at the bottom, Allison's signature in blue ink. I saved it to my cloud folder. 8 p.m. A new email. Sender, Crawford Building Supply Legal Department. "Ms. Morrison, we are aware of the post you published on the local forum. We take this matter very seriously and are conducting a full investigation. To ensure fairness, we ask that you submit all relevant evidence through official channels to our legal department. We are committed to handling this lawfully. We also suggest that you refrain from further public dissemination of this matter at this time." I read it twice. Then I typed 3 words, "Understood." I saved a screenshot of that email too. Back on the forum, my post had been pinned. 2,000 new comments. People speculating, Crawford Legal sending an email means they're scared. Others telling me to forward everything to the State Business Fraud Division. A few just saying, "Stay safe." I scrolled through my private messages and found one from an anonymous account. Don't panic. Douglas Crawford won't touch you. He's wanted to get rid of that son-in-law for years. You just gave him a public reason to do what he was going to do anyway. You're fine. No name. But I knew who wrote it. Not Derek. The tone was wrong. Someone inside Crawford's orbit, maybe even the old man himself. I didn't reply. I closed my laptop, took a shower, and lay in bed staring at the framed photo on my desk. Anna's face, that pale hospital lighting, the soft pink blanket. I thought about how she'd never really left me. She'd been in every decision I made after that night. Going to basic training. Pushing through when I wanted to quit. Getting my nursing degree. Finding this apartment. Putting this desk in this room. Placing this frame on it. She was in all of it. I just hadn't been able to see her until now. I reached out from the bed and touched the glass of the frame. Then I turned off the lamp. Day 8. Things shifted. I was at work when the receptionist came back to the nurse's station. Kara, there's someone at the front desk for you. An older gentleman. No appointment. I walked out and saw him standing there. Tall, silver hair, immaculate gray suit, a polished walking stick in his hand. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp for a man his age. I knew him. I'd seen him on the cover of at least 10 business magazines. Douglas Crawford. Allison's father. He gave a small nod when he saw me. Ms. Morrison. I'm Douglas Crawford. I know who you are. May I have a word? There's a coffee shop across the street. My treat. We sat in a corner booth. He ordered black coffee. I ordered tea. When the server walked away, he looked at me and went straight to business. I read your post. That audit summary you included, it's authentic. I know. That document is internal company property. It shouldn't have left the building. He paused, his gaze steady. I traced the leak. Turned out to be the maintenance man who empties the shredder in my office. He comes in once a week. I picked up my tea but didn't drink. Let him talk. I'm not here to assign blame, he said. I'm here to tell you that your timing forced my hand. I was planning to move on Sean next month. You accelerated things, and you made it public. Now the board wants blood, and legal is scrambling to keep up. So you're thanking me? The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost a grimace. Half thank you. Half warning. Allison is my daughter, but what she's done lately has nothing to do with me. The harassment of your nurse friend, I found out about that yesterday. I've already had her address purged from our systems, and I've made it clear to Allison that if she goes near that woman again, I'll reconsider her inheritance. I set my cup down. Why are you telling me this? Because you're on your own now. You're not dealing with just Sean and Allison anymore, you're dealing with their lawyers, their PR team, and possibly a defamation countersuit. Are you ready for that? I held his gaze. Mr. Crawford, I have military medical records. I have your company's internal audit summary. I have the shareholder structure of Butler Building Supply. I have a recording of your daughter saying, "My father's side is handled." And I have a handwritten profit-sharing sheet with her signature. If this goes to court, I'm not a slanderer, I'm a whistleblower. He took a sip of his coffee, his expression unchanged. But something in his eyes shifted, surprise, maybe. Or acknowledgement. You're tougher than I expected, he said, setting down the cup. I won't take up more of your time. Here's my card. If their lawyers come after you, call that number. I owe you one. He placed a card on the table, stood, and walked out. I sat there finishing my tea, watching his black coffee grow cold. The cup had a faint ring of lipstick on the rim. Back at the clinic, I had 5 unread messages. 2 from Derek, 3 from Megan. Derek's first, "The old man came to see you?" His second, "Don't worry. He's setting up a fallback. He's known for being prideful, he won't let this family stain linger. You handed him a knife, and he used it. So now he owes you. Keep that in mind." Megan's messages were screenshots from the reunion chat. Word had already leaked that Douglas Crawford had come to see me. People were speculating, did Kara cut a deal with him? I texted Megan back, "Let them talk." Then I called Derek. "You knew he'd come?" "I guessed. He runs on his own schedule. You accelerated it, and he had to catch up. He said he owes me one. Write it down. That kind of man doesn't forget a debt." I held the phone a moment, then said, "Derek, why have you been doing all this anonymously? Since that day at the Greyhound station, what's the real reason?" The line went quiet. Long enough that I thought he'd hung up. Then, "Kara, do you remember that day, when you were in line at the Greyhound station, there was a woman in front of you with a crying toddler? You crouched down and talked to that little kid." "Not really. I was behind you. I saw you squat down, you said something to that kid, and the kid stopped crying. And when you stood back up, the blood on your jeans had spread. You looked down, frowned, and went right back to waiting for your ticket." His voice was steady, but I could hear the weight underneath. I thought, how can this girl crouch down to comfort someone else's kid while she's bleeding through her own pants? I never forgot it. And I always figured, if she ever needed help finding something, I'd help her find it. I couldn't speak. "Did you find it?" he asked. I looked at Anna's photograph, sitting in its frame on my desk. "Yeah. I found it." "Then that's enough." He hung up. I sat at my desk as the sky outside went dark. The city lights started blooming in the distance, scattered and warm. I picked up Anna's photo and held it for a long moment before setting it back in its frame, straightening it just so. Day 12. Crawford Building Supply issued a public statement. After a comprehensive internal review, the company has confirmed that former sales director Sean Butler engaged in unauthorized contracting with external vendors for personal profit, in serious violation of company policy and business ethics. His employment has been terminated effective today. Relevant evidence has been submitted to the State Business Oversight Division. It didn't mention Allison by name. But a local business reporter added, sources indicate Allison Crawford Butler has resigned from her marketing role. The couple's home has been listed for sale as of this weekend. I read it over my morning coffee. Tater dozed in my lap, his head pressed against my wrist, purring like a tiny motor. In the reunion chat, someone posted a photo taken at a Walmart in West Phoenix. Sean in a gray hoodie, unshaven, standing in the canned goods aisle with the blonkiest expression I'd ever seen on a human face. Saw him buying instant noodles, the caption read. Another message said Allison had moved back to her mother's place. Someone spotted her at Saks in a regular Toyota, no makeup, dark sunglasses. Brittany, the old friend who'd switched sides 7 years ago, typed a single comment, funny how the wheel turns. I didn't respond. Day 20. Derek called. Kara, Sean reached out to me today. To you. He doesn't know who I am. He found my professional contact through a business search. He wants to hire me to investigate something. What? Whether you'd accept a settlement. I leaned back in my chair. Sunlight fell across the desk, warming the glass over Anna's photograph. What did he offer? Derek said a number. It was a lot, more than I'd make in 5 years of nursing. Kara, that's just his opening. It might not even be from the Crawford side. Might just be him and his dying company throwing a last Hail Mary. I looked at Anna's picture. Then I said, Derek, tell him no. I'm not doing this for money. I did this so everyone would know what he walked away from 7 years ago wasn't just a relationship. It was a person. And that person is not for sale. The line was quiet for a few seconds. Okay, Derek said. I'll tell him. And Derek? Yeah. Thank you. From the Greyhound station, to the files, to clearing that office. Everything. Kara. What? The way your shadow stretched across the floor when you crouched down to that kid. I still think about that. He hung up. I set the phone down and lifted Tater up to eye level. His orange fur caught the afternoon light, and his paws batted at my wrists, tail swishing. Tater, I said. Your mom's best moment was crouching down to comfort a stranger's kid 7 years ago. He gave a small, questioning meow. I set him down and looked again at Anna's frame. The last of the sunset bled out beyond the city's skyline. Streetlights began flickering on, one by one, until they linked into a warm, scattered sea of light across the valley. I sat there in the quiet, feeling something I hadn't felt in 7 years. Peace. Day 21. Sean texted me directly. Unknown number, but I knew the voice in the words. Same pattern as 7 years ago, soften the blow, blame the circumstances. Kara, I know you probably don't want to talk. But I'm hoping you'll give me one chance to make things right. I read it, turned my phone face down on the table, and finished my breakfast. Fried egg, toast, coffee. Tater sat at my feet waiting for his share of the yolk. I'd planned a quiet day, clip Tater's claws, hit the grocery store, maybe watch an old movie. Life had been loud enough lately. But Sean didn't let it rest. 10 minutes later, another message, I'm serious about a settlement. I know money won't fix it, but I owe you more than that. I'd like to see you in person. You pick the place. 5 minutes after that, if you don't reply, I'll assume you're open to talking. I swallowed the last bite of egg, picked up my phone, and typed 4 words, there's nothing to talk about. Sent. Then I blocked that number. I thought that was the end of it. That afternoon, I was pushing a cart through the grocery store's frozen aisle when my phone rang again. Another unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Sean's voice came through, older than I remembered, carrying a fatigue I'd never heard in him before. Kara, don't hang up. Just give me 3 sentences. I stopped the cart by the frozen pizzas. Cold air poured out of the open coolers, chilling my shins. Fine. Go. 1. I know I ruined your 7 years. 2. You can see where I am now, I've got nothing left. And 3. Tell me the child in that photo. What was her name? My grip on the phone tightened. You don't get to know that, I said. Then tell me this, that night you were on the floor in pain, did you think about calling me? Even once? I stared at the row of frozen pizzas. No. You left your keys and $20 on the coffee table. I figured you'd already said everything you needed to say. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, softer, Could I see the photo? Just once. No. Goodbye. I hung up, pocketed the phone, and finished my shopping. When I got home and carried the groceries upstairs, there was a cardboard box on my doorstep. No return address, just my name and address in block letters. Inside, a stack of papers and a handwritten letter. Allison's handwriting, neat and tidy, more composed than she'd ever seemed in person. She admitted to being part of Sean's scheme, took responsibility, but said she hadn't known Sean was still engaged when they first got together. He'd told her he'd already broken up with me. She found out the truth the night of the reunion. The last paragraph: I'm not asking you to forgive what I did, the nurse, the surveillance, the PR team in the chat. I own all of it. But I want you to know I never wanted anything to happen to that child. I have no right to speak her name, but I made a donation to the Children's Hospital in her memory. If you'd like, it can be under her name. I read the letter twice. Then I opened the box: receipts, acknowledgement letters from the hospital, a printed donation confirmation. The amount was substantial. Tater jumped onto the table, sniffed at the papers, and looked at me with his wide orange eyes. I ran my hand down his back and sat there for a while, thinking. Allison had made a donation. In Anna's name. Whatever her reasons, that child had been remembered. I packed everything back into the box and put it on top of my closet. I wasn't forgiving her. But I remembered what she did. Day 22. Derek and I met for lunch at a small diner east of town. I got there first and sat by the window, ordered a lemonade, and watched the door. When Derek walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. Leaner than I'd imagined, black-rimmed glasses, a navy hoodie, and a beat-up canvas bag. He looked like any grad student drifting through the neighborhood. But his eyes, they matched the voice on the phone. Quiet. Observant. He sat across from me, dropped the bag at his feet, and gave me a half-smile. Shorter than you pictured? Younger than I pictured. He ordered black coffee. When it came, he pulled a manila envelope out of his bag and slid it across the table. Last batch. Tax returns for Butler Building Supply. Supplementary agreement addendums from last year. Those include a separate commission clause that wasn't in the main contracts. And an email Allison sent to the 3 suppliers instructing them to reroute payments to an offshore account. I flipped through the stack. Thick. Every page had notes in the margins. I looked up. How long did all this take? From the day I found the registration? About 18 months. I had other cases in between. Did you know what you were building toward when you started? He raised his coffee, his eyes meeting mine over the rim. I knew it'd be used when someone needed it. Who and how, that wasn't for me to decide. Aren't you afraid of blowback? Sure. But that's never stopped me. I smiled, slid the envelope into my bag. Thanks. This meal's on me, it's the least I can do. Then I'm ordering the expensive burger. We sat for over an hour, talking about nothing heavy. He told me about a documentary he was following. I told him about a patient at the clinic who came in every Wednesday and told me about her grandson's soccer games. The wind chime at the door clattered whenever someone came in. Streetlights came on outside, and the sky shifted from pale blue to deep indigo. At the door, he paused and looked back. Kara. What's next for you? Normal life. I mean, you've put everything out there. The only thing left is the trial. Are you ready? I looked out at the street, the wind smelling faintly of dry grass. I've been ready for 7 years. What do you think? He laughed, gave a small wave, and walked off into the night. Day 30. The State Business Oversight Division sent an official notice. Sean Butler and Allison Crawford Butler were under formal investigation for commercial fraud and misappropriation. The notice listed me as a key reporting party and said I might need to testify. I filed the notice with my other documents. In the reunion chat, someone linked to a local news article, Crawford's former son-in-law under investigation, ex-fiancé is key whistleblower. Comment sections varied, some said, good riddance, some said she's ruthless, others shrugged, she was pushed to it. Megan asked how I felt. I told her the truth, nothing special. I'd done what I needed to do. The rest wasn't up to me anymore. I started getting recognized at work. A woman in her 70s came in for a flu shot, saw my badge, and whispered, "You're the girl from the news, aren't you?" I said probably. She patted my arm and said, "You did the right thing." That night, I sat at my desk, pulled the Polaroid out of its frame, and turned it over. Her name is Anna. You gave her life. I couldn't give her a home. The ballpoint ink had smudged slightly, like the writer's hand was shaking. Tracy Wang had kept this photo for 7 years, waiting for the right moment to return it. She probably didn't know she'd handed me more than a piece of paper, she'd handed me a key to a door I'd locked 7 years earlier. I put it back in its frame and let it catch the lamplight for a long while. Day 35. A small blurb in the local paper, Butler Building Supply had entered bankruptcy proceedings. Assets frozen. Staff laid off. Sean hadn't found permanent work after Crawford, he was picking up odd shifts at a lumber yard. Someone snapped a photo of him there and posted it to the reunion group. Sean in a neon safety vest, a baseball cap pulled low, loading timber onto a flatbed. He'd gotten thinner, tanned, his back curved under the weight. No trace of the tailored suits, the expensive watch, the polished smirk. Reactions in the chat were scattered. Some said, "Wow." Some said, "Pitiful." Some said, "He brought it on himself." I looked at the photo for a few seconds, then set the phone down. I didn't feel pity. Not because I was cold, but because I'd already crossed a river. He was on the other bank now, and nothing would bring us back to the same shore. Day 40. A new patient at the clinic. I saw her name in the system as I reviewed the intake forms, Tracy Wang. The nurse. She was sitting in the waiting room with her daughter, the same little girl who'd pressed the Polaroid into my hand. When Tracy saw me, she gave a sheepish smile. I moved to Phoenix. Figured I'd stop by and say hi. I brought her into my office. Her daughter swung her legs on the chair, unwrapping a piece of candy. Tracy and I stood by the window and talked. She said she'd left her old hospital, not because anyone pushed her out, but because she felt too exposed. Every shift was a knot of anxiety. So she resigned, packed up, and came here. You hiring? She asked. We are. Send your resume, I'll forward it to HR. Thanks. I looked at her face, the same face I'd seen in the hotel corridor under that dim sconce light. In the clinical fluorescent glow, it looked softer. Tracy, I said, you kept that photo for 7 years. Why did you wait? She let out a small laugh, looking down. Honestly? Because my own life was a mess back then. You were on that gurney, I took the picture, and then you checked out before I could even find you. I tucked it into a book and forgot about it for years. Then when I was packing, I came across it, and I thought, I should try to find her. And I saw the reunion announcement. So I went. You didn't have to. I just thought, she said, looking out the window, if you went your whole life not knowing that child had a name, that wouldn't be fair to either of you. My throat tightened. Her daughter bounced off the chair and ran to tug her sleeve. Tracy scooped her up and smiled at me. I'll send that resume. Take care. They left. I stood at the window and watched them walk down the sidewalk. The little girl ran ahead, Tracy trailing behind at an easy pace, their shadows stretching long in the afternoon sun. Day 50. A subpoena arrived. I'd be called to testify the following month. I met with Jesse to go over witness protocols, the procedure, what to expect. Then I called Derek. You heard I'm testifying? Saw the news. How much more material do you have for evidence? Everything you already have is solid. But there's also surveillance footage. I pulled it from the building where Butler Building Supply was registered. It shows Sean and Allison entering that office together late at night, staying about 40 minutes, then leaving. That was the month they signed the first fraudulent contracts. Send it. He emailed an encrypted file. I watched the footage, grainy, but unmistakable. Two figures walking down a corridor, unlocking a door, disappearing inside. 40 minutes later, they came back out. I added it to my evidence folder. Day 70. The trial. Small courtroom. The gallery held maybe 15 people, some I knew, some I didn't. Megan sat in the third row and gave me a thumbs up. Tracy was tucked in a corner with her daughter, the little girl quiet and wide-eyed, for once not even chewing on candy. Sean sat at the defendant's table. He'd put on a dark jacket, cut his hair, looked more put together than the lumberyard photos suggested. But there was a resignation in the set of his shoulders that no suit could hide. He didn't turn to look at me. Allison sat next to him. No gold dress, no diamonds. A plain black suit, hair pulled back, no makeup, her face pale. Her lawyer flipped through documents while she stared straight ahead. I took the witness stand. Raised my right hand. Swore the oath. The prosecutor's questions came in waves. The medical records from basic training. The reunion night. The photograph. Tracy's testimony. Sean and Allison's company. The transfers. The contracts. The audit. The recordings. I'd gone over each piece so many times in the previous months that every date, every number, every page was etched into my memory. I answered without hesitation. The prosecutor asked, Ms. Morrison, what motivated you to make this information public? I looked at the back of Sean's head across the room. In the courtroom lights, his hair looked thinner than I remembered, a bare patch near the crown showing through. I did it so the child I lost 7 years ago would be remembered, I said. And so people would know that no matter how much time passes, there's always someone left who can speak for the ones who can't. Silence. The judge's gavel tapped once. The prosecutor said, no further questions. I stepped down. As I walked past the defense table, Sean glanced up, his lips parted, but I didn't stop. I went to the gallery and sat down, and Megan's hand found mine, squeezing tight. The trial lasted 3 days. On the third afternoon, the verdict came down. Sean Butler was convicted of commercial fraud and misappropriation. Sentence, 2 years 6 months, suspended for 3 years, with fines and restitution totaling approximately $450,000. Allison Crawford Butler, for her lesser role, cooperation with the investigation, and charitable contributions, was sentenced to 300 hours community service and fined. They walked out the back door of the courthouse together, into a swarm of photographers, climbed into the same silver sedan, and drove away. Megan stood beside me at the window, watching them disappear. How do you feel about that verdict? I watched the car turn the corner and vanish. I think, I said, that's where it ends. I wasn't being merciful. I was being honest. He'd lost everything he'd traded that old life for. Allison had paid her own price. The rest wasn't mine to collect. I went home, opened a fresh can of food for Tater, wiped the dust off Anna's frame, and sat on the couch for a while. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Tracy, "Did you send your resume?" She replied instantly, "Sent." HR said I'll hear back next week. Good luck. You too. I put the phone down and looked out the window. Phoenix sunsets were always beautiful, the sky layered in shades of rose and lavender, the hills to the west outlined in gold. I'd seen a sunset like this once before. 7 years ago, in the back row of a Greyhound bus, the curtain half drawn, the evening light spilling across my face. I hadn't known then what I'd just lost. I thought I had nothing left. But I was wrong. I'd lost something, but I'd also kept something. It took me 7 years to find her name. But she'd been there all along. Tater jumped onto the back of the couch and nudged my shoulder with his head. I reached back, rubbed his ears, and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. It was cold, and I drank it down, and something in my throat that had been tight for years finally let go. The next morning at work, the front desk girl handed me a small envelope. Inside, a handwritten card, the script messy but heartfelt. "Kara, I'm moving to another state in a few days. Before I go, I wanted you to know something. That day you crouched down to talk to my daughter in the Greyhound station, I was standing behind you. I saw the blood on your jeans. But you bent down anyway, and you were steady. I remember thinking, this person's heart is whole. And later, when I sat in the courtroom and watched you testify, all I thought was, look at that. Her heart's still whole. Take care of yourself. Tracy." I tucked the card into my desk drawer, next to Anna's Polaroid. Anna's name now lived in 2 places, a faded photo and a hospital donation receipt. That was enough. More than enough. A little while later. I couldn't remember exactly which day, because the days had started flowing normally again. Work, home, Tater, TV, occasional calls with Jesse, occasional coffee with Megan. I was in the grocery store one afternoon, pushing my cart down the frozen aisle, and it hit me. I was standing right where I'd been when Sean called me that day. The freezer air had gusted against my legs, the same row of frozen pizzas in front of me. I felt different now. The coiled tightness I'd been carrying was gone, replaced by something looser, like the stretch after a long sleep. I grabbed a pizza, dropped it in the cart, and kept moving. At home, I unloaded groceries. Tater batted at the plastic bags. I scooped him up and held him to eye level. His round eyes caught the kitchen light, bright and patient. "Tater," I said, "your mom won." He meowed. Head butted my chin. I carried him to the desk and picked up Anna's frame, wiped a smudge off the glass that wasn't even there, and set it back down. Outside, the sky was darkening. Streetlights came on, one after another, all the way down the block. A train horn sounded from somewhere in the distance, muffled and low. I set Tater on the desk. He circled the frame twice, then settled down beside it, curling into a warm orange crescent. 1 person, 1 cat, 2 frames. In the lamplight, we were still. All the things I never wrote down, the sleepless nights, the cracked ceilings I'd stared at, the random moments at work when I'd think, what if she were here? The slow way I'd walk past children's clothing store windows without even realizing I'd slowed down. Those things were still inside me. They wouldn't vanish. But they wouldn't drag me down anymore. Because the thing I'd sunk in deep water 7 years ago had finally been hauled to the surface. It was lighter than I'd expected. Just a piece of paper. A photograph. A name. But it was also everything I carried. I touched the edge of the frame one last time, then switched off the lamp. Tater purred in the dark. The city hummed beyond the window, and a dry Phoenix breeze slipped through the crack in the sill, stirring the curtain just slightly. I closed my eyes. Good night, Anna. Once life settles, it settles fast. I remember the blue button-down I wore to court, the one with a top button that never quite stayed done up. I kept fidgeting with it on the stand. Now I've washed that shirt so many times it's softer. It hangs on the far left of my closet. I still wear it sometimes, and it doesn't feel as tight anymore. The clinic is the same rhythm every day. Coffee. Print the schedule. Color code the charts. See patients. Seniors for blood pressure. Kids for shots. Mid-career folks for physicals. The occasional walk-in emergency that throws everything into controlled chaos. When it's slow, I sit at the nurse's station and read, my phone tucked in a drawer. It doesn't buzz every 5 minutes anymore. Tracy got hired. We share shifts sometimes, and we eat lunch together on those days. Her daughter comes in after school and runs straight to my desk, calls out Kara, and pulls something out of her pocket for me. A wrapped candy, a sticker, once a crayon drawing of a sun and a cat. She said it was for Anna. I took that drawing home and put it under the glass on my desk. Tater walked across it once and left dusty paw prints. I wiped them off. Tracy never pressed me for details about Anna. She didn't need to. She'd been in that ER room. She knew what she'd handled. One evening we walked out together, her daughter running ahead, and she said quietly, when I took that photo, "You were still coming out of anesthesia. Your eyes were closed, but your hands stayed on your belly." I thought, her body knows more than her mind does right now. I kept walking, but my fingers curled inside my pocket. Later I put the photo in an old book, she added. It had an orange cat on the cover. Don't know why I chose that one. Maybe you looked like the kind of person who'd have a cat. I do, I said. Orange. Orange. Then I got it half right. We split at the corner, she went left with her daughter, I went right. The Phoenix wind was strong that evening, shaking the palms along the street. The noise was loud, but it was a good kind of loud. At home, I lifted Tater. He was heavier. The scale at the clinic had him at 12 pounds last month. The vet said to cut back. I tried, but every day at dinner he sits at my feet with those saucer eyes, and I always tilt the spoon just a little further. I haven't told the vet. The reunion group chat is quieter now. Once the story cooled, people drifted back to their own lives. Someone posts a meme or a news link now and then, a handful of responses follow. That night at the Marriott, the chandeliers, the blue tablecloths, the 3 forks, feels far away, like a scene from a movie I watched years ago. Sometimes I still think about that evening. Sean at the podium, wineglass in hand, the flash of his watch when he lifted his arm. Allison at the center table, gold dress catching every light in the room. Brittany weaving through the crowd with her practiced smile. Those memories feel like thumbing through someone else's photo album. I'm in them, but the connection is faint, like catching the scent of dinner from someone else's kitchen. It smells good, but it's not my meal. Brittany and I exchanged 2 messages after the trial. She sent, "Congratulations." I sent, "Thanks." Then a couple of months ago she texted that she was moving to Florida for a new job and asked if I'd meet her for coffee one last time. I said yes. She picked the same Starbucks on East Street. Same corner booth. Same latte. But her hair was back to its natural color, and she wore less makeup. She looked less like Allison's sidekick and more like her own self. "You look good," she said. "So do you." She smiled. Lighter than before. "Before I leave, there's something. That gray profile post, I know you know I made it. But I also posted once more, on a different forum, anonymously. Photos of Sean at the lumber yard. The bankruptcy proceedings. A timeline of what he lost. I picked up my cup. "Why?" She turned her cup in both hands, lipstick mark circling. "I guess I wanted to fix something I broke. It doesn't undo what I did. But it makes me feel like I tried. Then thank you." At the door, she looked back. "If you're ever in Florida, text me." The wind chime clattered as she left. I finished my tea, walked home, and passed the frame shop on the way. The window display had changed, new stock, silver frames this time. I went in and bought one, just the right size for the crayon drawing. That little girl had spelled out, "For Anna's son," in wobbly capitals. She couldn't write properly yet, but the lines were pressed deep with effort. Now 2 frames sit together on my desk, one wood, one silver. One holds the Polaroid, the other a child's son and cat. Tater treats them differently. He sniffs the Polaroid and walks away. But the crayon drawing, he'll curl up beside it sometimes, watching it like it might move. Sometimes I stop what I'm doing and just look at the 2 frames side by side. No deep thoughts. Just looking. Checking in. Derek still texts. He's not a frequent contact, once every few weeks. "How are things?" or "Caught the news update on Crawford." His timing is always right. He sends things just when I need to know them. Once he sent me a longer message than usual. "Kara, I walked past that shared office space in West Phoenix today. Someone else has rented it. There's a new sign." I stood outside for a while, thinking about the night I moved those files out. One of the hallway lights was burned out. I carried boxes through the dark toward the bright part. I wondered, if you got those files, would you get to walk toward the bright part too? I read it 3 times. Then I wrote, "I made it." He replied with a smiley face. We didn't talk about it more after that. He did ask once if the clinic was hiring volunteers. A friend of his had just moved from out of state. I said yes, send a resume. It was a normal, unremarkable request, and that made me realize we'd crossed from "you helped me" to just knowing each other. That felt good. Sean's sentence moved through the system faster than expected. The fines and restitution, most of it came from liquidating the last assets he had. The lumberyard photos got picked up by a local legal affairs show. They ran a segment, "From Crawford Royalty to Lumberyard Labor, One Man's 7 Years." I didn't watch it, but Megan did and sent me a voice note summarizing it. She said they interviewed a former coworker of Sean's who described him as capable but too impatient. He wanted to reach in 2 years what took others a decade, the guy said. So he took shortcuts. He ended with, "If he'd just slowed down, he might not have ended up here." I listened to the note and set the phone aside. I didn't have anything to add. His story was his to write now. Allison went quiet. After her community service, nothing. No photos, No reunion chat mentions, no news. Tracy mentioned once that the house they'd listed kept dropping in price and still hadn't sold. I said and let it pass. Sometimes I think about the branching paths. What if Sean hadn't left? What if I hadn't gone to basic training? What if I hadn't collapsed on that track, or if the medic hadn't caught it? Any small divergence, and I might not be here, at this desk, with these frames. But those what-ifs ripple and vanish. What stays is what happened. I went. I collapsed. I learned. I waited. I found her. Fact weighs more than what if. One night I dreamed. I was back in that studio apartment, suitcases on the floor. Sean had just walked out. The door clicked shut. I was on the floor, in pain. But in the dream, I didn't curl up. I stood. I picked up the phone. I dialed. "Help," I said into the receiver. "I need an ambulance. My stomach hurts. Something's wrong." The dream jumped. Hospital corridor. White walls, green doors, antiseptic smell. I was on a gurney, lights passing overhead one by one. I turned my head and saw a woman in a beige coat at the far end. She was holding a baby. She smiled at me, then turned and walked away. I woke up. The sky was the gray-blue of pre-dawn. Tater was a warm weight against my pillow. His ear twitched when I moved, but he didn't open his eyes. I lay in the dark, replaying the dream. In the dream, I called. In real life, I didn't. That call might have saved her. It might not have. No one will ever know. But in that dream, I did the thing I should have done. I called, I went, and someone was waiting at the end of the hallway with my child. That's the best closure I could give myself. In another version of the story, I made the right choice. I turned over, buried my face in the pillow, and slept again. When I woke for real, the sun was full in the window, cutting a bright gold line across the foot of the bed. Tater was already awake, crouched on the windowsill, batting at the blinds. Click. 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 I sat up and checked the time. 7:23. Time for breakfast. Eggs, coffee, toast. Tater's can of food. Weather app said windy today. I grabbed a jacket on my way out. This is my life now. An apartment. A cat. A job. 2 frames. A heart finally at rest. Some might say this isn't the proper, satisfying ending. No dramatic courtroom reversal. No villain dragged away in cuffs. No final shot of me on a mountaintop. But I had my mountaintop moment that night at the reunion. When I stood at the podium, held the microphone, and told an entire room what 7 years had done to me, that was the moment I walked out of the water. Everything after that, the evidence, the trial, the verdict, was just the tide receding further. 2 frames sit side by side on my desk. 1 old photograph. 1 crayon drawing. 1 holds the past. 1 holds the future. Tater curls up next to them, tail flicking now and then. It catches on the silver frame, curls, and lets go. I rub his head, grab my jacket, and head out. Outside the clinic, the palm fronds are white side up in the wind. Sky is a clean, sharp blue. Tracy is already behind the nurse's station, coffee in hand. She waves when she sees me. I pull up a chair, open my laptop, pull up the schedule. This is how the days go. But I know now, the things I thought were sunk forever, they're not in deep water anymore. They're on my desk. They're in the sun. And that's enough.